Whatever you can visualize, you can do today.
Here's the 2-2. Hit deep to center field. Out is back. He's on the warning track. He's at the wall. Goodbye.
One at bat.
High fly ball, deep right field. Nicholson back. Nicholson at the wall. Kiss back, baby. Goodbye.
One pitch.
Here's the 2-2. Struck him out. Ball game is over.
Stay in the moment. Show that heightened awareness.
3-2. Swing and a miss. He struck him out. Half a dozen for Kevin Schiff.
He was a winner. So are you. He was a champion. So are you.
Bernhardt hits it. There it goes. Way back. You can forget that one.
And we love the big game.
It shot its way to Higgins. Hit deep to left field. Smith is back at the wall. Looks up. Kiss that baby. Goodbye.
We love the big crowd.
I need not tell you that this place is rocking.
We love the pressure. We love the challenge.
Here's the 1-1 pitch. Curveball hit into center field. Tailing away from Kerner. He's got to go a long way. And he made a great catch. Holy cow, what a catch by Kerner.
We must heighten our awareness to be excellent. Potential's unlimited. It's unused success, unused talent, unrevealed strength. It's dormant gifts that you have. It's hidden talents that you have. It's untapped resources that you have. It's a sum total of what you will be, but are not yet. Today, continue that focus. Have a good time. Play like champions.
There is no greater authority on winning big games than Skip Bertman, the head baseball coach at Louisiana State University. Bertman has established at LSU an unparalleled legacy of excellence, leading the Fighting Tigers to 4 NCAA College World Series championships this decade. Not since Southern California won 5 straight national titles in the early 1970s has one program achieved the level of supremacy LSU has attained in earning the designation Team of the 90s. Bertman began his LSU tenure in 1984 after 8 seasons as an assistant coach at the University of Miami. He rapidly transformed LSU into a national power, and he directed the Tigers to their first national championship in 1991. LSU has continued to assert its superiority throughout this decade, following the 91 triumph with College World Series titles in 1993, 1996, and 1997. Bertman is one of only 2 coaches in NCAA Division I history to claim 4 baseball national championships. And under his guidance, LSU owns the highest all-time NCAA tournament winning percentage. Now, let's meet Skip Bertman and discover his innovative techniques in producing a championship-caliber team.
Hi, thanks for allowing me to share some thoughts with you through this video. I've always used the term winning the big one as a metaphor. To me and to my players, it means striving for excellence, never being afraid to fail, being a great teammate, and being the best you can, both off and on the field. It has less to do with winning any single ball game and more to do with winning every day in life. And that's what this video is about. Now, this video is not intended for you to watch only once. Use it as a reference tool so that you can go back to any part often. For that reason, I've included an index so that you can look up specific information. Make sure your VCR is on 0 when you begin. For example, if you want a specific story or a specific motivational tool, you can look it up in the index card and go right to it. This video is divided into 5 segments: striving for excellence, overcoming failure, the fear factor, motivation, and team building. Since our mission statement is excellence both off and on the field, naturally we started there. But after that segment, any segment of the video can be watched in any order. Now, these techniques really work for me, and with some variations, I'm sure, could work for you as well. Since much of the video was shot as it happens, naturally, I've made mistakes. But that's okay. It's okay for the coach or team leader to make a mistake. What counts, of course, is continually trying to get better. I've also put some valuable information for you at the end during the credits. There you'll find some useful telephone numbers and addresses to obtain some of the tools that I referred to in the video. I've even put my address and my phone number in there so that you can contact me as I welcome your feedback so I too can improve. I hope you'll use this video over and over again and use it as a reference tool often. Best of luck. Let's get started.
The LSU Tigers have reached the championship game of the College World Series more than any other team in the 90s, including 4 College World Series titles. And the LSU Tigers have a perfect 17-0 record in the final round of NCAA postseason play. Players, coaches, and fans alike all know the success is due to Skip Bertman's unyielding devotion to excellence.
Thanks for allowing me an opportunity to help you and your team achieve excellence. I've been on fields like this for over 35 years, trying to do a few simple things. Get more hits, throw more strikes, catch more balls, score more runs than the other guys. But as you know, achieving excellence isn't easy. It requires motivation and teaching real teamwork, making your team fully aware that a great team is more than a collection of just great players. But to build that awareness, that very real sense of teamwork, we need to start with your ability to motivate your players. Real teamwork and true motivation, those are the tools you need to be excellent, to succeed, to win often, and to win the big one. I'd like to show you how I put those tools to work to create some championship teams. Now let's get started. First, and I believe the most important, building championship teams starts long before taking the practice field, because champions do more than just score more runs or more points than their opponents. To make champions, you've got to build their entire lives, their bodies, their hearts, their minds around excellence. And that's why I start with a very clear, very strong mission statement that applies to my players' lives. You and your team should have a mission statement too. Our mission statement is this: excellence, both off and on the field. Perfecting any skill starts with an attitude of excellence. Here's a lesson you can teach your team. Excellence is quite simply the continuous, relentless, never-ending commitment to improve. Excellence is the gradual result of always trying to get better. It comes from the Latin word excel, which means to rise up. Excellence is getting to the field earlier, training harder, practicing longer, working smarter, and preparing more than others care to or expect to. To achieve excellence, you've got to believe and make your players believe in the value of every available moment of every day and in the quality of each teammate. Excellence doesn't come with any amount of expected effort. Excellence means making a special effort. Do more than is asked, expecting more of oneself. Here's a defining characteristic of excellence, and you have to try and instill it in your team as I try and do. Excellence is not a sometimes thing. You don't achieve excellence through a series of afternoon practices. Excellence is an all-the-time thing. You can't just do things right some of the time. A near miss isn't almost right. Doggone it, it's wrong. In America, we spend a great amount of time and money to achieve the very small difference between very good and excellence, because excellence is the highest standard by which we measure human achievement. See, excellence is a habit. Winning is a habit. So, unfortunately, are losing and mediocrity. And like all habits, they affect our lives. If there is a secret to excellence, it's this point, and you should make it perfectly clear to your players. Excellence seekers aren't 20% better in any single area. They're 1% better in 20 different areas. The first rule of our program is, good enough never is. We seek excellence both on and off the field.
One thing that he does different in that strive for excellence is that he's just relentless in his approach to practice, that it's never enough. It doesn't matter what time it is, that you know, there's things that got to be done and things that got to be done a certain way. From making sure that the field's clean when the opposing team comes in to take batting practice, to the way you take batting practice and the way the team runs on and off the field. I mean, nothing's too small in his mind.
He gets hold of one and sends this one deep to
Bertman has enjoyed great success on an international level as well, having served as the head coach for the 1996 United States Olympic bronze medal team and as an assistant coach on the 1988 U.S. gold medal squad. Skip Bertman led the LSU Tigers to the College World Series 4 times before finally winning a national championship. And often, his teams became champions after suffering big losses. That's because Coach Bertman knows how to get his team to overcome failure.
People won't get fired up, won't set high goals, they won't try new things because they're afraid they're going to fail. And truly, the number one obstacle to success in adult life is fear of failure. But everybody fails. Learning to be resilient, persistent, relentless is what the players must learn, because failure is a part of winning. Excellence seekers see failure as a temporary setback and part of the natural laws of life. After all, everybody fails. But when my player fails, I ask him to ask himself the two most important questions. One, what did I do right that got me this far? And number two, what could I have done differently to make the situation come out a little better? No negatives, no beating yourself up, just learning and growing and moving on. Legendary basketball coach John Wooden introduced a fast break to college basketball. In that year, they set a record for turnovers at UCLA. But of course, they stayed with it, perfected it, and the rest is history. Sports Illustrated, for 11 straight years, never made any money. But they stayed with it. And of course, that too is history. You can't give up, you can't give in, you have to be relentless. Chuck Noll, Tom Landry, and Bill Walsh, three of the greatest NFL football coaches, counted for 9 of 15 Super Bowl victories from the years 1974 to 1989. These three coaches also have another record in common. They had the worst record for a first-year coach in NFL history. But they stayed with it. See, they were resilient, they were relentless, they were persistent. Can never give up, you can never give in. People remember you for your successes, not for your failures. Ty Cobb is a great example of how we remember people for their successes and not for their failures. For many years, Ty Cobb was considered the greatest base stealer of all time with 96 stolen bases. But he was safe only 70% of the time. That means he was thrown out. That is, he failed nearly 1/3 of the time. But we don't remember that. Now, the Major League record for baseball's highest percentage in stolen bases, 51 of 53, is held by Max Carey of the 1922 Pittsburgh Pirates. That's 96%, but nobody remembers that because he didn't risk enough. When Rickey Henderson finally set a new stolen base record, he was thrown out 42 times. That, too, is a Major League record. See, risk is not just important, it's essential. It must happen for you to be successful. The most prolific failure of all time was Thomas Edison. As everybody knows, he tried thousands of times to perfect the electric light bulb and a storage battery. But this guy was relentless. He was persistent. He was really resilient. So much so that by 1930, fully 1/6 of the people in America used a product that was marketed, distributed, and produced by this so-called failure, who obviously saw every failure as a learning experience of how not to do it. Failure. It's part of winning. Remember, risk isn't just an option, it's imperative. You might want to teach your players, as I do, that they will fail. We all fail, and we simply need to use it to get better. The more familiar players are with failure, the easier they can rise above it. I use a couple of techniques that have been successful for me. One is, I take some 36-inch poster board, and on that paper, I put newspaper articles of tragic circumstances, often failures of one kind or another that have actually happened recently. Then I usually put it in the end of the dugout near the bat rack so the players can see it. Here's what I do when a player strikes out, throws a home run pitch, or makes an error and he's really down. I'll give the player a few moments to compose himself. Then I refer him to the poster as a reminder of what can really go wrong in the world and how we can rise above tragedy in life as well as on the baseball field. My players practice telling themselves, I'm better than that. I can overcome this. Then pick themselves up and get back in the ball game. Players have to learn to be comfortable with failure. After all, it's part of the game. Mark Twain once said, the ability to forget is often more important than the ability to remember. And boy, that's true if you've just delivered a pitch that was hit for a homer, or you struck out and left a couple of runners on base. Our players have to develop mental muscles that allow them to be flexible enough to make a mistake and then say to themselves, I'm better than that. Next time, I'll do better. A great technique to get back into the moment, to shake it off, is literally to flush it. A technique that was given to me by Dr. Ken Ravizza, who worked with us on the Olympic team. He's a sports psychologist with the California Angels. And in the back of our dugout sits a bank with a battery in it, in the shape of a toilet. But the battery allows it to flush. In which the player can literally flush away his mistakes. This symbol is so successful, I've gotten each player a keychain with a smaller version where he can take it with him. And whether on or off the field, he can flush away his mistakes. You want to help your own team do the same. Recognize first, you can't succeed without risk, but risk brings failure. So help your players get comfortable with failure. Use those unavoidable failures to overcome, learn, and seek excellence. And the vital thing is that failure really is part of success. Be relentless.
I can remember a game against Tennessee where I was pitching and the score was tied, and the leadoff guy next came in and came up and hit a home run. They went ahead by 1 run, and I still had 3 more outs to go. And Coach left me out there, and that gave me confidence. And what he says is, you got to flush it and move on to the next pitch and the next out, and that's what I did. And he also says, all you can do is all you can do, and all you can do is enough. And when you're out on the mound, you learn from that, and he gives you the confidence to go out there and get the next out. And that's what I did. I got the next 3 outs, and my teammates picked me up, and we eventually ended up winning the game.
Skip Bertman has produced more than 20 Major League players during his tenure at LSU. His players know how to play under pressure because one of Bertman's techniques is designed to help his players overcome a powerful but distracting emotion, fear.
There's a saying that you might want to teach to your team. It goes like this: weak teams avoid challenges. Champions rise up and meet challenges. The reason anybody runs from a challenge is simply plain old fear. It's the doubt, the anxiety, the nervousness that you're about to be put to the test and you might not make it. Well, here's an example how you can get your team to put fear on their side. You and your team should know that fear is natural. It's the appropriate response in challenging situations. At its worst, fear sends bad messages that start with physical responses like a faster heartbeat or a dry throat. Then the imagination runs wild and the imagined consequences become exaggerated. Suddenly everything seems more difficult than it really is, causing people to underreact or overreact. To help your team handle fear, you must get them to acknowledge it. Don't ignore it or shrug it off. I don't like it when players become too cool. I believe it's the wrong attitude. The crew on the deck of the Titanic, they were too cool. Initially, they thought that their ship couldn't be sunk by an iceberg. Obviously, that wasn't the appropriate response. The first thing you have to do is acknowledge fear. The good news is we've got plenty of company. Everybody fears failure, even the great ones. Here's a couple examples. Bill Russell, one of the greatest and winningest NBA players ever, would get nauseous before the big game. Edwin Moses, the greatest 400-meter hurdler ever, who ran 102 races spanning 7 years without ever losing, He said, before a race, I feel like I'm being led to my execution. The best competitors understand that there is no choice but to confront fear and turn anxiety into excitement and action. Here's an analogy. Fear is like fire. When under control, it can provide the energy, say, and the warmth that you need. When out of control, it can burn up everything around it. When fear is controlled, it can be your friend. Fear can be your ally. Here's an acronym that we've used for years. F-E-A-R, false evidence appearing real. Fear tells lies. It distorts and exaggerates, making it hard to tell what is real and what is imagined. What is real is the point I want to make to my players again and again. Their coaches and teammates will love and support them no matter what happens. And that goes a long way toward turning fear into a tool for excellence. Here's a good mental and emotional exercise. Learn it and use it often in those moments of fear. I tell our players to take an imaginary trip around the bases. Starting at first base, acknowledge fear and that it's real. Then take a deep breath, relax, and go for second. At second base, do this. Look around and imagine the worst thing that could happen at that moment. Then decide what you do and do it. Then run to third, get there safely. At this point, your players have already visualized success in tight spots. But at third, I tell our players to visualize what they want to happen, all the good things that the player and his teammates are going to do. Then get to home plate mentally and put those things into action. Tell your players to find the can-do things and make them happen. Dean Smith, the former great North Carolina basketball coach, had this to say about fear and its imaginary consequences. He said, if all the situations we describe as matters of life and death really were, there'd be an awful lot more dead people around. The best way to keep fear in its appropriate place as a tool is to get your team to practice fearful situations and to focus on those things they can control, not on those things they cannot. For example, in the bullpen, set the pitcher up with a winning run at third base. All he can do is deliver the pitch. That's all he can control. In a batting practice situation, make sure that the hitter is up with a winning run at third base and that he tries to get the ball into the outfield. You must focus on those things that you can do, not on those things that you can't control. The reason fighter pilots can enter very real life and death situations and still take the appropriate action is that they have rehearsed the situation literally thousands of times, and they are confident. Remind your players as they confront fear, they have rehearsed many times, and they too can act with confidence. Here's a technique I've used for years. It capitalizes on the energy that fear creates and helps our team turn it into a tool at just the right moment. There are a few minutes right before the game that can provide you with a wonderful teaching opportunity. That's when real readiness on the player's part exists. If the player is going to have problems with fear and self-doubt, this would be the time. Many think, what if I'm the one who makes the error? What if we lose tonight? What if I play poorly, and so on? Now, it's never said out loud, but it's often thought of at this time. It's right after infield. It's just minutes before the game begins. I always take my team to right or left field, depending upon which dugout we're using. I always go over the signals, repeat the game plan information that I think is necessary. Then I wait for eye contact, and I tell a story, a true story, about a person or people who performed best when it counted. At just the right time, my players can hear about and even feel the fear that others before them have felt and overcome. Then they can take the field and do well in spite of their own anxiety. Here's parts of a story that you could use about fear. Dennis Krimble, a Navy pilot, takes off from the Kitty Hawk in the Persian Gulf. And he's on a combat mission. He describes in vivid detail, you know, the anxiety and how hard your heart beats. And at 40 miles, his radar picks up other aircraft. As a flight leader, he has to decide very quickly whether they're friend or foe, whether to engage or withdraw. and assign to each of his planes who to go after. When he's within 15 miles, the decision must be made. At 15 miles, there's only 75 seconds left. The reason that they can do that, those fighter pilots, for every combat mission they're in, they've got hundreds and hundreds of times they've been in a simulator, a similar situation. They are prepared. They have chemistry of confidence. They believe that they can. What you have to remember, guys, is that pressure will make you better. Because you two, what's real is you two are prepared. You've been prepared for this game for weeks and months, and in essence, for years. So today, when you go out, use fear, talk to it, make it your ally. There is no real pressure. You're going to be supported and loved by your teammates and coaches no matter what happens. Because you represent LSU, you represent your family, and you represent your maker. Today, let's play like champions and have fun too.
I was feeling very nervous before the big game, and I mean, I had the butterflies going and my adrenaline was rushing, and you know, that can be a debilitating feeling. Coach Bertman takes me aside and he says, Eddie, see, that feeling you have is your body's way of getting ready to perform at a higher level, and use the fear. And I used it, and I got the big hit and did well, and from then on, I used fear as my ally instead of a debilitating force.
Coach Bertman has inspired the LSU Tigers to many championships, including 6 Southeastern Conference titles in the 90s. One of Bertman's cornerstones is his belief in motivation.
Motivation is a much overused, much maligned term. It usually refers to pep rallies or sales rallies in business. Motivation is very, very real. Motivation is the fuel that enhances people's performance. Motivation comes from the Latin word moto, to move. Even the decision to do nothing is based on motivation. And just as certain fuels burn with different levels of intensity, different kinds of motivation work for different situations and different people. Let me show you what works for me, and with certain variations I feel could work for you as well. Here's a quick rundown of some specific motivational techniques I use. You've already seen a few, but I want to give you some more details so you can use them as well. I use custom-made videos, stories of real people and real events, some good demonstrations to make a point, a very large collection of quotes and motivational statements I distribute regularly, and our successful speaker series, and even some individual activities for our players to use on their own. One of the great motivators, I feel, is the use of video. All people, but especially young people, are zeroed in on video. They're used to watching MTV, the TV screen, and of course, computer screens. If you keep it short, it'll really work. I usually use the time during the other team's batting practice before a game to show video, but actually it can be done anytime. The video is divided into 4 categories: baseball skills and stories of ball players, or stories about the game itself. General motivational videos, and these are videos of all kinds of people being successful, people overcoming adversity. Music videos, that is videos of our players, these are energetic pieces which let our players see themselves on the screen, and educational videos like those which carry a great message, such as anti-gambling or anti-tobacco or another good message. But here is the key. You've got to collect videos and portions of videos continually. Treat them like a reference library. Update your collection and do more than just play the tape for your team. For example, prepare a short presentation to introduce the video, then another to drive home the point afterwards. Rehearse your pre-video talk and your wrap-up afterwards. You know, the world is full of great stories that are highly visual and effective for you and your team. I've created tapes and given them titles our kids can relate to, like Defense Wins or Defense Wins Again, which are really copies of Major League Baseball highlights, sometimes taken from video that was bought in a store, and sometimes taken right off of post-game television highlights. I also use movies like Mission Impossible, Rocky, Braveheart, and many others, and take out short segments that I feel are meaningful for